All aboard, friends, and welcome to another episode of Animation Station. Brandon and I are finally back to talk about the next piece of Adventure Time Distant Lands. We're talking about Obsidian today. I am Sparkz Witty. I am joined by Brandon T. McClure.
Hello, everyone.
He comes from afar, a land down under, one might say. And hey, Brandon, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm actually watching, as I told you before we started, I'm watching Adventure Time Distant Lands Wizard City right now.
That's great, but not what we're talking about today.
No, so I should probably put away Peppermint Butler.
Put Peps away.
As I said that,
PB should not be here.
the TV turned off.
Fantastic. What timing? Brandon, I don't even remember how we did this last time. This is one of your most anticipated to talk about, I suspect.
It is.
It probably is for me too, because I think Together Again's really good, but I also think aside from like one particular thing, and we'll have an episode about Together Again, aside from one particular thing about it, I think this is the strongest of the four. Having not seen Wizard City, but come on.
Being halfway through Wizard City, I am confident in saying it's the strongest of the four.
Come on. I think Obsidian, like, Together Again's really nice. I think Obsidian is telling a story that everybody wanted to be in the show to begin with.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the difference, I think, that is there. Actually, interestingly enough, I think Wizard City actually also might be answering a question that I think everybody wanted answered in the show, which is like, what's the deal with Peppermint Butler? But that I think is maybe a little less important than the question here, which is what happened with Marceline and Bonnie's relationship?
Ever since it was revealed that they were a couple before, the question of like what broke them up has been big for Adventure Time fans.
Right, and the amount that like the crew has played into like fan stuff for years, going all the way back to like the early seasons where people were like, "Oh, Bonnie's looking a little lighter than her normal pink color here. Why is that?" And it's like, it's because Marceline was drinking her color. Sure. But here we are. I also think this is a super solid entry. Is my point. I watched it recently this week, which was my second time watching it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this like rules.
Yeah, hardcore. I think the music, I always love Marceline's music. I think they've always excelled there. But here, the both songs that are kind of the main songs of the episode are really strong. And I think the story is really tight, and like all of the Adventure Time Distant Lands, it became much more surprising than we had anticipated.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about how I want to go. I don't want to go like beat by beat through it. I think there's one thing that I think is really great. Thank you, Emma. About this episode, this entry. This is not really an episode. The special. For how it fleshes out Marceline's backstory. However, I do think that it feels tacked on in a sense of like, this feels like stuff we should have explored by now in the show. And that's the stuff with her mom.
Yeah.
While I really like it and want it in this entry, it's great. A+, exactly what I want it to be for this. But when I think about the context of the show leading up to this point, I'm like, how did none of this stuff come up before?
Well, we were first introduced to her mom, I think, in the Vampires miniseries, weren't we?
Boy, it's been too long, man. But you've watched those things more recently than me.
I don't even then. I don't exactly remember where, but we did meet her mom briefly for a moment.
Yeah.
And that was always really interesting because we didn't really know Like the Vampires miniseries talks about how she was a demon before, like she was half demon before she became a vampire, um, half vampire, half demon. But we didn't know anything about her human side, and then we get a glimpse of it in the show, and it always kind of felt to me like the showrunners didn't know where to fit it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I end up here too, which is that like while I think it works really well in this entry, I feel like there's still so much. In many ways, while I think like her mom's story in the sense of how it's kind of hung over Marceline this entire time is a really great character beat and pays off really well. Again, if I'm thinking of this story, it does feel kind of like a easy out. We don't really need to explain a lot about this with her mom to just be like it to have her just, well, she was sick, so she sent her daughter away, and that's the end of that story. Oh, and that trauma has like held over Marceline. And again, like I like that idea. I like the idea that the whole reason why Marceline's had a hard time being honest about her emotions and being able to express herself and having a lot of like how to communicate what she's feeling comes from her mom not being out front with her about stuff is cool. But as far as like what that relationship is, who the mom even really was, it feels like just taking the easy path of this is like bare minimum we need to do to ever address her, and now we're out. Which I guess is fine, but like when I think about like the length of the show, this feels like something where this should have been more at some point.
Yeah, I remember seeing her mom in the show and thinking that it would come back around. We'd see that moment again, or we'd see a different angle of that moment and we get more of it, but we never did. The show ended without ever addressing her mom ever again. So I think that potentially the showrunners thought going into this episode, they were like, well, it should be, we should pay that off finally. We should finally tell the audience and show the audiences more of that, because perhaps they felt perhaps the fans were disappointed that we never saw more. So it's kind of like an obligation.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of how it feels. Like again, I think it's in this story the right amount, and I think it serves this story the right way. But when I think about the entire show and the story, I'm like, it does feel like an obligation. It does kind of feel like we just had to serve this single purpose and move on. And that sucks a little bit. I kind of wish that we had a better insight into what exactly how her mom and her dad were a thing. Why what it like there's something very strange about how the timeline works there for when Marceline was born and why her mom is still alive, around. And again, like thinking about like what her mom was going through kind of recontextualizes and recolors her relationship with her dad in a way, but in a way where like it's now become weird that it's not addressed.
Yeah, we never know. We don't know anything. Like the two. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only two characters alive were in present day Adventure Time, present day in quotes, because they're starting to bounce around the timeline a bit. Are Marceline and Simon. Those are the only two that were alive before the Great Mushroom War.
That's the implication, is that they were the people we like. Simon takes her in sometime after her mom has abandoned her.
Yeah, but we don't. But we know what Simon was doing before the war happened.
Right.
But we don't know anything about Marceline's life before that war. We have only met her after.
Right. And well, like, and there's such a gray spot of like, does Marceline come from before the war even?
That's a good question.
And like, and that's what I mean is that, so it's weird when I think of like the way Marceline was left alone by her mom. The fact that that's not something that she ever kind of addresses with her dad in all the stuff that she carries like baggage with her dad over. The fact that her mom never comes up, knowing that there's kind of an absence that could be linked to why their relationship fell apart, why she was all alone with her, the fact that her mom just was struggling. That relationship's just not explored. And I think that it, while this entry does a great job, I think it bears open a weak point in the story, the lore of Adventure Time as an entire piece. That just sucks. That it's just kind of ill explored, or maybe even ill conceived to begin with.
Yeah. So I needed more light on my face, so I put on a muted something to just play in the background.
No, it's fine. Yeah, but like again, like it's weird. It's a weird note because it's not really a knock on this entry. Again, like I think this entry is really, really great, really solid. I think as just watching it by itself, it's fantastic. But it is something where I feel like they worked backwards so much on the concept of what her mom was to her and what she was doing, that this is like a satisfying answer in the context of this special, but kind of a weak answer in the context of the entire show.
Yeah, I get that. And I don't think I disagree. I really like seeing her mom, but it's just the lingering question of how did her mom meet her dad becomes more prevalent when all we see all we see in the show is Marceline's relationship with her dad and how much she doesn't like her dad, and then going into
Well,
this, where did why did what's her dad's name? Abernathy?
yeah, Hudsucker.
Hudsucker. Like how did they even get together and when? And I feel like those need to be important questions if you're going to go into Marceline's history.
And it's not even like I need to see the answers necessarily, but I need to feel like the answers exist, and I just don't even feel like they exist. I think that something you touched on there was so Marceline believes that her mom abandoned her because she thought she was a monster. We find out in this special that's what she's believed this whole time.
Yeah.
It's weird that hasn't ever come up for Marceline before, that she feels like she's, again, like it works in the sense of her expressing that to Princess Bubblegum, but I'm like, even in the like private scenes we've seen with her father, where like she was expressing emotion to him, but like no one else was in the room. There was no Finn in the room or anything at the moment. The fact that her mom doing that never came up, never felt like a thing hanging over her. Like it's retroactively saying this is why Marceline was this way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's cool. Like that does link up. It does make sense. But it's a little strange that Marceline never addressed that at all. And again, like that's just kind of them working backwards, and
yeah, I mean the answer
works in this special.
The answer is
kind of weird for the show.
Yeah, the answer is that they didn't have this thought out when they were doing the show, really.
Right, and I guess that just feels really weird in the context of Adventure Time, where the lore, even when things have been worked backwards, feels so like at least the ideas were hinted at before they were fleshed out or explained.
Yeah.
And her mom's just not one of those things.
You get that all the time with Adventure Time. It's why I first connected with the show, is that, if they didn't give us the answers outright, you always kind of felt like they were there.
Yeah, I mean, like, it took years for the show to reveal like the history of the world and the Mushroom War and everything, but the hints were there.
Yeah.
It took a long time for people to piece together exactly what the world was. But you could tell that they were always leaning into something.
Yeah.
So it's just strange in a show that was so good at that for this to be such a missed moment. And again, it's so weird because it's so good for this story. It really is. It's such a good motivating beat. And again, like it makes a ton of sense the way Marceline phrases it, of like, my mom meant well, but I think that really messed me up. And that it does work as like an eye-opening moment because it's Marceline not having heard the voicemail that explains that her mom didn't abandon her but was dying.
Yeah.
And that recontextualizes it and recontextualizes everything that Marceline's felt about herself and her mom since then.
Mm-hmm.
But because the story was never guiding us to that idea, it feels like it's having to do a lot of legwork here to sell us on that. And again, like, that's just really strange coming from this show. It's not normally the way things work.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Anyway,
yeah,
that's a whole no. Yeah, that's a whole. I think, like, for me, that's just one of the standout things where, like, I kind of felt weird about the way the mom stuff wrapped up and like just its inclusion in general the first time I watched it. Not in like a bad way, but I'm like, man, something feels off. And I think the second time it just became much more clear to me that I'm like, man, this really works, but it's really strange that this has just not ever come up before.
Yeah. And it's not like BMO, where BMO is addressing outside of Adventure Time lore.
Right.
It even when we know that Mr. M is Mr. Merton, but we don't know, we don't need to quite know how we got to where he was, because we don't know that BMO is a prequel until the end of the episode. But there's nothing in BMO that says that doesn't fit perfectly into Adventure Time.
Well, and like, there's a good example there in Mr. Merton with Mr. M, because like, we never see his face, but we know that's him. If you've watched the show, you know it's him. And it's kind of the same thing, but like working backwards, where in the show, I feel like there should have been things that were that subtle that should have pointed us to this stuff about her mom being Marceline's motivation, being a part of who she is. And I guess it's also weird because Marceline is a character who I wouldn't have said when the show was over wasn't really well explored.
Yeah.
Which means that it's hard to buy that there was a whole very crucial layer of her that we just were never privy to for all those years. I just landed in a weird space with it, but like, it's just that one part of it. But moving on from that, so Marceline and Bubblegum get to live in domestic bliss now.
I think it's incredible that, first off, the fact that they were able to include the kiss at the end of Adventure Time between Marceline and Bubblegum is a monumental moment of animation history. But the fact that they're able to come into this and have the two be a couple throughout the entire time is just so great.
It is. It's true. I had to think about that for a moment, because I'm like, unfortunately, it took so long for them to do something like this that at this point, like, children's animation in other places had beat them to the punch. Like, we'd seen non-heterosexual couples romantically interlinked and kiss and things like that on other programs by the point that this aired. So while Marceline and Bubblegum were definitely like a major relationship breaking down that barrier in the progress of Adventure Time, so that more shows felt more ambitious and able to do it, they unfortunately are not like the landmark, hey, here's a couple of girls making out with each other and like, it's great, it's beautiful, here it is. And they're not the first ones to like hit that punch
to be fair,
in that world.
To be fair, I'm coming at it way after the fact, and I only slightly remember the whirlpool of articles and clickbaits and outrage and praise that was happening at the time that it happened. I was not watching Adventure Time actively when that happened. So and even like animation, like I'm not as well versed in animation as you are.
Right, and that's what I mean, is like, it is like, I agree with you, like, it's really great that they got to do this and everything. It's unfortunate that like this isn't something that the show was able to do in its runtime, because then it would have been the thing where like, we'd turn to it and we'd be like, and that's the first time children's animation had a non-heterosexual couple kissing on screen. And that's great. And Adventure Time could have been that, but this happened so much further down the road from when they started building the idea of this relationship, that other things in animation, in children's animation, have beaten them to that mark, to that benchmark. Even though this is like you're right, like this is an incredibly important part of animation history, because it is at least a whole thing that is laser focused on that relationship.
Yeah.
It's still not the first to take that crown, which it should be, but it didn't make it there, which is more just a comment on like studio's lack of faith at the time, and then Adventure Time getting canceled, or ending, I should say, not getting canceled, but ending before the wave of studio acceptance for things like that started to shift.
Yeah, I mean, there were many shows that kept trying, and studios and networks just wouldn't let them. Voltron is a good example of just people
Sure.
who just kept trying, but wouldn't be allowed.
Right. And like, because the one that's jumping into my brain right now is Star versus the Force of Evil, which I know Star versus the Force of Evil show episodes that featured non-heterosexual couples kissing came before this special release, which is just like, there it is. But I think even before that, you could make a reasonable argument that it was Steven Universe, and I wouldn't push back on it even a little, which is fair, because Steven Universe like took the mantle that Adventure Time had put down and like ran with it as far as like progressive representations, which makes sense because Rebecca Sugar came from Adventure Time, so it's there is a lot of connective tissue of like who took what Adventure Time was doing and made Steven Universe excel in the places that it did, which, regardless of how anybody feels about the show, like Steven Universe is 100% a hugely like progressive representational show.
Right.
Like on a scale that I don't know that children's animation can ever match it, because we're talking about making alien species that are a metaphor for non-binary representation, and I'm like, I don't know that we'll ever get more direct than that. Like, I don't know that you can get any more on the nose than that. But this isn't about Steven Universe. This is about Obsidian, and it still is great that they got to make this special. It's certainly well deserved that this got to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one that I was mostly looking forward to when they first announced what the Adventure Time Disneyland episodes were going to be, and the fact that it ended up quite as good as it did is, it's not a miracle, but it is so welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that you're right about the music. I think the music in this is overall good. I even like Glass Boy song,
Oh yeah.
See Through You.
Hmm.
I think that's cute, and not bad. But I especially like him being a sounding board for Marceline to be like, oh my god, that's what I sound like. I need to grow up.
Yeah, I like I mean, the whole like the whole thing is like Bubblegum and Marceline are obviously in love, but Marceline is not at the same developmental stage as Bubblegum is. And it hurts their relationship because she's lashing out a lot because of what happened with her mom. And to have the emotional crux of the arc having needing Marceline to accept herself for who she is so that she can, reach the level of emotional maturity that Bubblegum is at,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can solidify their relationship and move past the barrier that broke them up in the first place.
I think the other thing that like very, very, very slightly doesn't work for me is Bubblegum's obsession with still being recognized by the Glass Kingdom.
Hmm.
Only because thinking about her stuff in like the last chunk of Adventure Time, she kind of seemed to get like really far away from caring about that stuff.
Sure.
And I can respect that, like, it's digging up an old wound and that's making her sensitive to it. And I think that's where the story kind of works, but like her jealousy over Marceline uh being praised by the
Hmm.
Glass Kingdom maybe lands just a little too like, oh, this feels like old Bubblegum, not current Bubblegum.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's some. I mean, I do think like it's meant to be. This is digging up an old wound.
And I guess I'm just saying, like, I think maybe it's laid on a little too thick.
Yeah, I get that.
Um, like that, just a little. I get the point of it. And I think overall it works. But yeah,
Every now and then, even Adventure Time lays things on a little too thick than they should.
nothing's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see if
I like the idea that Marceline is is praised because of her song, but the Glass Kingdom get the song wrong.
yeah, like
I think that's a
really
fun,
wrong.
really
Like
wrong.
like really bad lyrics to the point where like when they were like the first time I was watching it and I'm listening to them singing, I'm like, this just doesn't sound like a Marceline song. And then
No.
it's like, that's because it's not. Yeah. Her diss track is real good.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that also I'm sorry, it's on in the background. Marceline's design in this is like top 10 Marceline design for me.
Do you mean like modern or her flashback style?
Her modern style.
Uh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really works. And I think, Marceline's evolution design wise throughout the show really works for me. Because, she started off with this like really kind of puffy long hair and then she like slowly progressed into this punk rocker type aesthetic, and then her hair got messier and she started being a little bit more rock and roll. And I think that when they finally solidified that character design wise is when I think the character also really clicked in with the show as a character.
For sure.
um and I think uh that's really well portrayed in this episode.
Mm. Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's helped by like just being really effective with how they flash back between not just the last time they were in the Glass Kingdom and now, but also to her childhood. Like I think
Yeah.
that's all just paced really well, and it allows like these very different representations of who she's been to stand out and stand apart.
Hmm. I don't mean to jump ahead, but I this came in my thought, and I just want to say one little quick thing about it. I really, as a Marceline and Bubblegum stan, I guess, they the fact that we get to see just a quick moment of when Marceline gave Bubblegum the shirt
Oh yeah,
is beautiful.
it's a pitch perfect finale, and in many ways, like emotionally, I think it's the stronger finale of Distant Lands.
Hmm. I would agree with that. Together Again is pretty fresh in my mind, and not to say too much about Together Again, but like I was left wanting emotionally when Together Again ended, and I was not with Obsidian.
I don't want to get too deep into Together Again stuff,
Mhm.
but there's something specific about Together Again's ending that I'm like that. It's why I'm mad that Wizard City came after, and we'll get into it. Uh, but neither here nor there.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that the whole piece is made stronger by flashing back to that moment. It serves. It's good, I think, because it treats the fans, but it also just serves the story.
Yeah, I agree. It's because it's the first time we're led to believe the first time that they really met,
Yeah,
right?
it's the first time. It's the first time she ever saw her.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
having kind of showing us these different stages of their relationship with the flashback and the present tense, and then flashing back even further to see them when they first met is just a really nice button on the arc of the present day story.
Well, and also I think just the last line of the whole thing getting to be "I've always loved your songs,"
Hmm.
and it honestly leaves me in a place where like I I know that there's going to be more Adventure Time stuff. We now know this because at the time of recording this, they've said they're making the new Fiona and Cake series,
Mm-hmm.
which is multiversally tied to Adventure Time still, not just a spinoff. I don't really ever want to see Marceline and Bubblegum ever again. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
that's a
don't
good. I didn't even think
I
about
don't
that.
I don't really want to ever see them again because I like this as their end so much for
Yeah.
like what we see of them in the story. I don't really want like some one-off appearance where they're just kind of background characters in someone else's story to be something that we do at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um like unless you are mounting up a whole thing and you're making like big time making more Adventure Time and you're making another thing where they're going to be like they're going to have a focused arc, it's going to be a whole thing, then I relent. Like of course I want to watch more of them, but like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want like a I don't want a choose goose appearance, you know, of
Yeah.
them as far as like a cameo kind of thing.
Sure.
I don't really want that because I'm like, this was such the right way to be done with these characters. I don't really want. And then that one time when they appeared
Mm-hmm.
here and did a little bitty bit in the back, and then they moved on.
You know what? It almost makes it feel like this episode. It almost kind of, we talked about Adventure Time is a really great finale episode,
Yeah,
um, and this,
probably one of the best ever.
yeah, and I think that this episode kind of makes the case for this being Marceline and Bubblegum's finale episode. This is just another finale.
Right. It's honestly this part I will say like about Together Again. I kind of sit in a similar place about Finn and Jake
Yeah,
after Together Again. I'm kind of like maybe I don't ever want to see them again
yeah.
now. To be honest with you.
I have to watch it
Um,
together again.
I guess what I would say for Finn and Jake, the thing that's a little different is I don't want to see Marceline or Princess Bubblegum anymore.
Mhm.
Like I like this finale for both of them so much. I don't want to. I could see Finn again. I don't think I want to see Finn and Jake again.
Oh, sure. Kind of like you could see Princess Bubblegum again, but maybe not Bubblegum and
No, no,
Marceline.
no, no. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's the difference. I
Oh,
could
I see.
see Finn again. I don't really want to see either PB or Marceline again.
Hmm.
Because I want this to be my last impression, my last moment with the characters, because it's that strong.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't I don't really want anything to blip back up into that and mess with it.
Kind of like how the end of this episode has Finn show up.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm like, there's so much Finn stuff that if you wanted to show more around how Finn shows up at the end of this, fine. I'm fine with it. I am fine with it.
Hmm.
But I don't think I want to see more Finn and Jake together.
Sure.
With Together Again now behind us.
I didn't even know that was Finn when he first showed up.
Oh, that's funny.
It totally like went over my head. I was like, "Who's this dude with a Jake tattoo on?"
And who sounds just like Finn.
Like it didn't even like click to me that would be Finn because I was so engrossed in this story. I was already bawling at this point
Sure.
in the story, and then he shows up, and I'm like, "That's weird. Who's the dude that Jake's granddaughter's with?"
And he just turned into like an old hippie, I guess.
I guess so, with an RV and everything.
He's stopped fighting at least to some extent because he's going arm without his arm
Hmm.
contraptions. He's just living life.
Yeah,
He seems very free at peace, as implied by him not really caring about the towel flying away.
yeah, and it's just I do want to know more about kind of that Finn. Like if we see
Yeah.
Finn again, I want to see that Finn again because I want to know why he's like is he adventuring with Jake's granddaughter? And this is obviously probably I guess not obviously most likely after Jake has passed.
Oh, I would say I based on the Jake tattoo and him hanging out with her and everything. Like I'd say this is post Jake's passing.
Yeah, I'd like to see like the two of them again explore that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Like that's what I mean is like, but that is where the difference is that Bubblegum and Marceline are handled so well here. I'm kind of like, no, don't just like pull them in for just to have them there.
Don't do it as background characters. You want them to be as um
If you
like
want to do another focus special on them, or if again, like if the show remounted, if they're gonna have like a whole episode in the Fiona and Cake spinoff, I have no idea why that would happen. But if they were, then fine. But if they're just gonna be like literally in a scene, just saying like, "Hey, what's up?" Basically being like how Finn is at the end of this.
Yeah.
If they were literally to be like that, I'd be like, please just don't. Please
Not
leave
to
me. Please leave me this happy memory.
not to derail a little bit, but I want to ask you a question about the Fiona and Cake thing because it was
Hey man, we can go off the rails all we want. This is Animation Station.
because I was thinking about this when I was walking up. Marshall Lee and Prince Bubblegum do not have the same relationship that Marceline and Bubblegum have. They are both actively trying to woo Fiona in their appearances.
Yes. And I mean, like, I don't think the characters in that world are supposed to be one for one. So,
Right.
um,
Well, my question is,
like, I don't think they're just supposed to be the same people gender swapped. I think there's supposed to be some more complications there.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Well, my question would be, do you think, because we are most likely seeing them in Fiona and Cake, they are popular characters, especially Marshall Lee.
Sure.
Um, do you think if we see them, they're a couple as well, like Marceline and Bubblegum?
I mean, what I really want to say is that the two of them and Fiona are polyamorous.
Oh, yeah. I guess Fiona is meant to be older than Finn, so that also lends credence to the idea that they're not supposed to be a one-to-one.
That's what I want to say it would
Mhm.
be, because I think that's what would be so spicy is that yeah, they're both competing for Fiona, but they're also both competing against each other in like in kind of a flirty way.
Mhm.
Just because I think that's pretty much that's the boundary we haven't really started to push in children's animation is like, hey, what if you had multiple partners? Like, whoa. But Fiona and Cake's going to be on HBO Max, so I mean, like, who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
Well, again, like, it's kind of there in Steven Universe. You could almost argue it's there in Steven Universe.
Sure.
But I wouldn't push that too hard. But it's not there. Look, all I'm saying is some people dance into each other's bodies, and sometimes that's more than two people at a time. That's all.
You know what was interesting actually about sorry to real quickly, when we see Simon, because we see Simon, it creates a mental note of where this should take place in your mind, and then
Mhm.
you see Finn, and that completely changes the context of where this takes place,
Yeah, it's much further down the road than you thought it was.
meaning Simon doesn't age,
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
or at least he ages much slower than he should.
Yeah. I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah, because Simon, he looks exactly like we left him.
God, I don't know. I guess he's immortal.
That's why I'm happy that we're going to see him in Fiona and Cake.
Sure. I like him just being like, "No, don't touch me. This is how I cope."
Yeah, he's got a little crown.
A little stuffed Gunter.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm sorry. Oh no.
It's so wild to be at the point where, like, I remember first watching the show and the first learning about Simon, and now be at the point where, like, he comes over and people are like, "Hey Simon, what's up?"
No more Ice King. He's
Right.
just Simon.
Yeah.
Just raiding Marceline's fridge.
People are just happy to see him.
Yeah, I really like Simon. I mean, look, the Ice King is an all-time great character for Adventure Time.
100%.
And when like, the tragic ending of him finally being Simon but losing Betty to Glob, um, I just think is so wonderful, and so the opportunity to see him in anything is always so crazy. And then you kind of get like what Adventure Time does really well. You get little bits. You get little bits of the story. The fact that clearly through context cues he's not aging the same way he should be, or if at all, and to finally get like he's in Fiona and Cake. So who knows where Fiona and Cake takes place? It is clearly in Simon's timeline, but that doesn't mean anything at this point.
Sure.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Um How do you feel about the subplot about the Glass Kingdom residents and the fact that they're all secretly broken?
I think it's kind of cute.
I think it's cute. I think it's also a little thick, laid on
Hmm.
thick, and not handled the best, but it's also not at all the point of the special. So I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, as someone,
it's laid on a little thick in the sense of like, hey, we're all broken, and I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, all right.
as someone who constantly talks about being broken, if I make it a little real, it did resonate with me. Um, but you're right, it is one of those elements that is thick.
I think it's that it's there in the context also of like I think there's just one too many connotations of it because it's all
Mhm.
of Glass Kingdom. It's also the dragon,
Yeah,
and it's also Marceline. And I'm like, that's a lot of us saying the same thing with a bunch of
yeah.
characters.
You kind of feel like you probably could have done with the dragon and Marceline because the dragon does create a nice parallel with Marceline.
Well, and honestly, and I would argue just Glass Boy.
Oh, sure.
I just don't think the entire kingdom had to be broken.
Yeah. Did
I even
nobody?
think I even think like maybe it would have been better if it was a mix.
Mhm. Did like anybody not notice that they were all using the same brand tape?
Right, and then so, like, the implication is that the princess was the only pristine one the entire time,
Mhm.
and I'm like, "That's just kinda weird." Like, that's
Yeah.
it's just kind of a weird way to frame it, where, like, I think it would've been better if, like, some were chipped, some weren't, and either way, it's okay, and that kinda being the message of it, at least as far as the Glass Kingdom residents are, but the fact that, like, literally everybody is broken,
Mhm.
and then the dragon is broken, and then Marceline is broken, and it's like, "Wow, alright, alright."
Yeah.
I mean,
And then
like,
you
I get you. Like, yes, I guess I would agree. Everybody is a little bit broken. I just think like we could have balanced it with like, yeah, but not everybody's broken in a way you can see.
oh, sure. Like
So
people like
like, not all of Glass Kingdom had to be broken in a way you could
yeah.
see.
So like some people in Glass Kingdom would be pristine like the princess and then some would be broken.
Right. I think there would have been a better diversity play
Mm.
in just saying like some and some aren't. But you're all Glass Kingdom. Like
Yeah.
there it is.
Glass Kingdom is a horrible idea for a kingdom, by the way. It is awful that they are sentient glass.
Well, it's not their fault.
I know. This it is not their fault, but it's sad.
I think it's sweet the way that like Marceline's sappy song is the thing that frees the dragon and lets its spirit free, and it remembers its history of how it was treated and things like that. And I think that's really nice. But again, like because you get that flashback, which is pretty, and I like it, but because you get that and you also have Marceline, just all Glass Kingdom didn't need to be broken. That's
Yeah,
my
I
thing. I
get that.
just I just think that's really like hammering it home. And I'm like, I don't know, guys, you're HBO Max. Like, I don't think you needed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like the sense that like maybe like you get this tragic backstory for the dragon, and you get this flashback with it, and it's like that's enough because
Mhm.
HBO Max is not going to HBO Max. Look, love HBO Max. HBO Max is a great app, but you know what? It's probably not the most child friendly app out there.
Did you hear that, AT&T? HBO Max is a great app. Sponsor us now.
No, but like nobody. I don't think that kids are coming to Adventure Time Distant Lands, like
I don't
actively
think I
seeking it
don't
out.
think I don't think kids are coming to it fresh and first.
Yes.
I'm sure there are kids that are watching this. But like it's not the audience it's being made for. It's being made
Yeah.
for the audience that grew up with Adventure Time. Like
Yeah.
that's so very clear by the fact that these things haven't aired on Cartoon Network.
Mhm.
Like these things were made for the fans who grew up with Adventure Time,
And
which
that's
is
the
fine.
benefit of streaming. That's the benefit of streaming, that you can do something like that and not lose any, like, ad revenue, not lose any audience members. You have a built-in audience for something like that, you know it's gonna get people in. You're not getting a new audience with Adventure Time Distant Lands.
Right. And so that's kind of where I end up at like we don't need to hit our morals of the stories so hard.
Yeah.
And in fact, we could be a little more nuanced with it, a little more adult with it.
Yeah.
Than even Adventure Time has been at times, and be more like, like the real balance is that some people you can tell and some people you can't, and here you are.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like I like I think they strike a really good tone mostly with Adventure Time Distant Lands, walking the line of like, it's still based on a kid's programming, but it's also more adult for the it's kind of more Pixar.
Yeah,
It's like Adventure Time Pixar level.
sure. And you get into a weird metaphor place with the advisors, the trio of advisors, who I think are fine characters and everything,
Hmm.
but because they are the most broken, but they're also the worst people, and I'm like, that's a little strange.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I feel like our metaphors are getting a little muddied at that point.
Yeah.
Um, like you could argue that what it's really portraying is that they were the most ashamed, and that's why they're bad
I
people.
think that's what they're trying to do, but it doesn't quite come
It's
off.
so it's so muddied, especially because you also go back to like everybody else in the kingdom was also covering up their chips the same way, just they
Hmm.
had less. And so it's like it's all kind of not not quite executed to the level I want it to be.
Yeah, I get that. By the way, that dragon design is pretty cool.
No, it is. It's pretty good. Bubblegum poops jelly beans out of her hand,
I
and
always love to see
everybody
it.
thinks it's real gross. And she's like,
Yeah,
"No, it's okay. It's jelly beans. It's not weird."
it's what I do because I'm a candy elemental.
Yeah. I'm looking
That
at
is that is really cool that they've never just forgotten the idea that like yeah, Bubblegum's really smart and she's a great character in her own right, but she's also an elemental in this world.
mhm. I'm just looking through my notes to see if there's anything else I like. Mm,
This episode had me in tears by the end of it. Like I think that final song that Marceline sings to Bubblegum is just so sweet, and I just quite honestly, if I never saw anything Adventure Time again, like I know you were saying, like you never want to see Marceline and Bubblegum outside of like a leading context again, but like this was the emotional climax to Adventure Time that I didn't know I needed. And I could conceivably, I won't because I'm like, I'm ride or die. I'm gonna watch everything they do. But like, if they never made anything Adventure Time after this special, I would totally just be like, yep, I'm good.
I I think that I very much live with this and Together Again are like the strong finale of Adventure Time for me.
Hmm.
Besides like the obvious end of the show, which was really good, but like uh I will say like I really like the episode. I don't think it got me like crying
Hmm.
or like that emotional. It's hard for me to remember the first time I watched it. Like I really liked it. You know what? It is really emotional when it gets to the end. When it gets to the flashback we already talked about.
The thing is like, it is. I've seen it 3 times, and all 3 times I've had the exact same emotional reaction.
Mhm.
And I always kind of put the the movies, TV shows, whatever. If every single time I'm watching it, I have the same emotional reaction to the first time, I put you higher because what does
Right.
Ryan always talk about is like if art isn't giving you an emotion, if you're not feeling an emotion towards art, what's really the point? Whether or not I agree wholeheartedly with that idea, I always look at the things that give me the same emotional reaction, not to trigger a bunch of people, but like Star Wars: The Last Jedi is the same way. Every time I watch Star Wars: The Last Jedi, it's like the first time I'm watching it. Every time I watch Paddington 2, it's the first time. It's like the first time. Every time I watch this, it's like the first time I watch it.
Right.
And
I mean,
because
like
of
this
that, like
is
I'm constantly
right.
feeling
That is very much like Lion King being one of my favorite things of all
it. Right.
time is that exact reason. It's because like it's not that I think it's the greatest movie ever made. It's that my emotional engagement with it has not changed since I was 5.
Exactly.
And as long as that continues to be the case, top movie right there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Yeah. So I get that. I think, and I don't want to say much more about it because we've already mentioned Together Again too much, but I think there's something about what we'll get to in the next time we talk about these with Together Again. There's something about specifically just like how the very, very tail end, the tag end of this, which is the flashback with the shirt and everything, that does get me. That is that is really, I feel like you took me on the full here I am journey. Great. Fantastic. There's something very poignant to me, in a very deep and like from beginning of watching Adventure Time all the way to that moment of Together Again's ending that does hit me.
Same.
Which is not to say like I think one is superior over the other, but I think these two both went for something with their finale that quintessentially hits the you have now gone full circle with Adventure Time.
Yeah, I
And I think
totally
they
see what
both
you're
are
saying.
serving that purpose in different ways, but
Mhm.
they are both serving that purpose.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and we've talked about it to death, but I'm only halfway through the Wizard City episode, so I can't say for certain, but as halfway through, I'm kind of like maybe you shouldn't have put this one last.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the future, most assuredly. Who knows? Maybe their ending is like blows you out of the water. Whoa. I couldn't know because I didn't know how BMO was gonna end when I
That's true.
watched it. So I'm like, I don't know.
BMO ends in a way where when BMO ends, we talked about it last time we talked about these, but like BMO ends and you're like, oh wait, I need to watch that again because like I didn't know what I was in for.
Yeah, the ending recontextualizes the whole thing,
Hmm.
which maybe Wizard City does.
It's
Who
like
knows?
Spider-Man Far From Home.
Hmm.
The post-credit sting recontextualized the whole movie.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh uh yes, but what this one and Together Again, their endings aren't recontextualizing anything. They're going, here's catharsis. And you're
Yes.
like, oh, thank you.
but they both offer what's really great about Distant Lands is that they have told us what they are in the
Mhm.
marketing. They're like, this is what this is. And then when you watch them, it's not quite as straightforward. Like Together Again, the moment that episode airs, the first I'm not gonna spoil because this isn't the episode to spoil it, but like
Right, right.
the opening of it, I was taken aback because I was like, oh, this is what we're doing?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I'm pumped to talk about that one for sure. But I do really love Obsidian. I don't know how I feel about the name of it. Um, if I'm being 100% honest. I think I lost you for a second. So we're just gonna hang out. Bippity boppity boop. Beep bop ba Whoop. Brr, brr, brr. Boop ba doop ba doop. I'll probably have to cut this out later. Beep
Okay.
bop. Boop ba doop. All right. Anyway, uh I really like Obsidian. I like it a lot. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the title of it, but I
Mhm.
really like Obsidian a lot. Um
Yeah, that's a good question. What does the title even mean?
Hold on. I'm gonna look up the meaning of the word
Obsidian?
obsidian.
The finale, the last the right now because I decided to put this one on to give me some like context clues if there's anything I want to talk about. And they're doing the dance party at the end, and just like Finn with a beard and shirtless with his tattoo is just like hippie Finn. What are you doing, buddy?
Right. Uh Obsidian is a rock occurring as a natural glass formed by the rapid cooling of viscous lava from volcanoes. I guess so.
I
It's
guess
about
so.
Glass Kingdom, about the dragon. It's okay.
Sure, why not? Oh
Um,
yeah, Glass Boy killed the three advisors
yeah, that happens.
at the end of
They
this.
just get swept away.
Yeah.
That was an interesting bit.
As someone who really loves Marceline and Bubblegum together, and as characters in their own right, um, having an entire episode dedicated to their relationship is more than I could have ever asked for
Hey
from
man,
anything.
I'm right there with you. Like I've been on the PB Marceline train ever since the rumors were flying about it. I was like, oh yeah. I remember watching it and thinking, no, that's bullshit. They're not gonna do it.
Yeah,
I remember when those things were being said, and I'm like, I mean, that'd be cool. There's no way because this was way before that kind of progressiveness had started to come into children's animation. I'm like, this wasn't back when this was happening was not that many years after Arthur had an episode pulled for just having a character have two moms.
Yeah,
Like,
I remember that.
not even an important character, a side character
Mm-hmm.
had two moms, and the internet flipped out. And like,
I remember going through it again because I came to Adventure Time when I first started to air with you when we were living up here where I am currently at.
right.
But I dropped off, and I never picked it up until the pandemic started last year.
Such a mistake. Such a mistake.
But like, you remember how quickly I went through the whole thing and seeing how clear it was that the showrunners were so into the idea of making those two the
Right.
end game couple and having hints of their relationship sprinkled throughout as much as they could, and until they could finally culminate everything.
Right. It was very much always the intention from the very first episode that Marceline and Bubblegum interact.
Yeah.
Like the reason that they get at each other is because there's a relationship there,
Mhm.
of that's built in its core on love. And that really worked, and it always worked. And they played to that. Yeah. I know other people who have were with Adventure Time, dropped off, and then went back and binged the whole thing and consumed it. And we're like, man, this is just incredible television. And I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, yes, I agree with you. Adventure Time, like, it's only going to increase as time goes on how much people recognize Adventure Time's large influence on animation,
Mhm.
storytelling. This is going to spill over into future animation, but also future other projects, because people who grew up on this are going to branch out, make new things. And
Yeah.
Adventure Time is going to be so integral, I think, to like the next generation of storytellers we're going to see coming up who lived the decade of Adventure Time.
It's honestly, its place in history cannot be overstated. I watched the show, and I have an app, and I think you have it too still, TV Time, where you can track your
Mhm.
your TV watching. Wonderful app, sponsor us. And
That's a more realistic sponsor goal
true.
for sure.
And when I finished it, you can put your favorite shows, and on it I've got Voltron, I got Battlestar Galactica, and I've got Community, and then when it was done, I was like, Adventure Time's got to go on that list.
Right.
It is one of my all time favorite shows. I think people are going to see it not just as not just living the decade that it was airing and being influenced by it, but I think people are going to be influenced by it, going back to it, finding it, discovering it. Um, I just it is a great TV show that didn't have a bad bone in its animation body. It was constantly just a kind TV show, and I think people are, especially now, looking for something like that.
I think Obsidian does something also that's really great, which is that there is an argument I think is reasonable that if you were trying to take someone to Adventure Time today and be like, you should watch Adventure Time, they're like, I don't know, you could start here.
Oh,
You
sure.
could be like, watch this, and then have that recolor them watching the whole series. And I
Mhm.
don't think it would really put any of the series, like, I wouldn't consider that spoiling the series. I think it would
No.
just recolor it to know that's where we're going, because it's also knowing where it starts.
Yeah.
You're getting
I
both
agree
at
with
the
that.
same time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, the only thing that you would know is how long-lived Marceline was, but that's not a
It's not
spoiler.
even that's not even right. And I think, like, having that in the back of your mind would recontextualize like the entire show going forward.
Because you wouldn't even, honestly, like, if you watch the episode with it, like, just erase Adventure Time out from my mind, and I just watch Obsidian, I would never put together that Simon was the Ice King.
Sure. Yeah, you would just be hungry for more of these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that makes Obsidian extra special, because I wouldn't say that about the others
Yeah, I agree.
at this moment. I think Together Again absolutely requires the previous knowledge and relationship with Adventure Time, and I think BMO just isn't something I would call an entry point.
No.
While being a prequel to the entire show.
But you need to be familiar with BMO.
I would not call it a way to introduce someone to Adventure Time. But I think Obsidian, you could do it.
Psychotic little robot.
I think if you wanted to give someone like the summation of like why Adventure Time's so funny, why the world is so cool, why the characters are so rich, why the emotion is so strong, Obsidian kind of captures all of it at its best.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's a super solid entry. I'm gonna scan over my notes one more time, see if there's anything we didn't touch on that I wanted to. Boop-a-doop-a-doo.
Yeah, I was thinking, at the end of this, all I could just really should do is just gush about how much I like it.
Right. I think that the really dark flashback of Marceline sucking out the soul of the wolf mom is super sad. Makes me real sad. I've never heard a more pained, sad reading of what's up?
Yeah. 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 Oh my god. Oh my god.
I kind of hate that because I'm like, I hate that this is humor and awful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Adventure Time does well. Sometimes they really just go for it.
Yeah. I also think that they do something pretty cool with having Marceline's base get destroyed, and she would usually like lose control over it, but she focuses on getting back to Bonnie, which I think is really nice. The only thing I will say about that moment is I think it's poorly paced in how it jumps between the two places. It's jumping back and forth between Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, and I think it should have just stayed focused on like that moment with Marceline and then her leaving, and then gone to Princess Bubblegum rather than like the cutting back and forth.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
It's the only part of the episode where I feel like there's a pacing issue.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Anyway, that's all my thoughts on Obsidian. It's a 10 out of 10 banger.
100%.
Oops, all bangers. Okay, so that'll do it for our discussion of Obsidian. We milked that thing for about an hour, so that's great.
I love it. I'm really excited we got to talk about it.
Me too. We'd been wanting to get to it for a while, and I wanted to make sure that I was in a place where like I'd watched it again, I'd taken some notes, I'd thought about it, because I wanted to be able to give it proper attention, because it is one of my favorite things to come out of Adventure Time, and I know yours as well. So I'm glad we did that. So let's before we depart our station, let's talk about some things coming up and where you can find us and all that kind of good stuff. The first thing I'll say is eventually it may not be the next animation station thing we do, Lord knowing the way that we work through things, but at some point there will be an animation station about Together Again, as we've hinted at, and you will get to hear us talk at length about that, which I'm looking forward to, but I have no idea when it will be.
You've got a vacation coming up.
I am on vacation. At the moment when this episode will release, I will be away. But we'll figure it out. Besides that, if you want to hear us talk about other things, there's a different animated show that we're not talking about on Animation Station. It's called Marvel's What If, and you can find that on Fake Nerds Watch. Brandon is also talking about yet another animated show that we are not talking about on Animation Station. I don't know why we made this show. It's over on Fake Nerds Watch.
It was.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I want to tell the audience.
It's over on Fake Nerds Watch, where Brandon is watching Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2 with some friends from some other podcasts. So go check that out. We have a backlog of Marvel shows on Fake Nerds Watch. You can check out Basement Arcade, Pause Menu, which is our co-host Ben's flagship thing. And he's talking to all kinds of people about retro video games. So if that's your thing, I don't know why you're here, but you could go check that out. Sometimes I'm there. Not often, but sometimes.
I might be there in the next episode.
You could check that out in the YouTube channel. Boy, what time is it? Last I saw, Ryan's asleep, so I don't know if that's happening tonight.
Might have to wait.
Yeah, you guys might have to do that one without me. So anyway, where was I? Right. Go watch Pause Menu. That's here on YouTube. There's some Basement Arcade stuff. We're making more stuff than there is like new stuff there, but check it out. There's fun stuff there. There's a Phasmophobia episode. It's cool. What else do we do on here? There's the flagship show. There's Fake Nerd Podcast, of course.
Fake Nerd Book Club.
Fake Nerd Book Club on hiatus, but there's comic book discussion stuff, and there's more coming.
It's Conver-Station.
Yeah, your show. You should.
Show.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time of this recording, I just put up Christian Renteria's episode. He does the Movie Pit podcast. One of my favorites I've done. Really like that episode. It's an audio only episode, so you cannot find it on this YouTube channel. But go subscribe. Yeah, it's up.
We have our podcast, Fake Nerd Podcast. At the time this came out, our most recent episode is still going to be our discussion of Shang-Chi, because we took a week off after that. So definitely go check that out. We do that usually every week. This is a weird one. So go check those out. All the links in the socials. We have Patreon. That stuff's all here. Like, if you're here, you know how to find it. Like, you're all smart. You know how to use the internet. Fake Nerd Podcasts to get in touch with us. Brandon, you say your stuff.
Fake Nerd Podcast on all the socials. Fake Nerd Guys at Gmail to get in touch with us. I'm a BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter.
I can be found on vacation at Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, Sparkz Witty. If you think this is going to get any cleaner, nope, I am never writing an outro for this show. So thanks for joining us for Animation Station. That we play it very off the cuff here. So until next time, we are now depart. I had a good ending last time and I don't remember it. Anyway, we're going to depart now. Goodbye.
I'll just do this.
Okay, welcome to Animation Station with Brandon and Sparkz. We're going to talk about Adventure Time Obsidian.
Hello.
What I thought was so good about the episode